And today we are going to be continuing our series, our moment, our pause in September, where we're reflecting on where we've been, where we're looking ahead to where we want to go. We've been talking about goals. Last week we talked about my birthday, which is a great opportunity, any birthday that somebody has, to sort of reflect and see where you are, where you want to be. And today in particular, we are going to be diving in, getting a little hands on with an exercise that Angela actually prescribes for her life coach clients. Not everybody, but different people. You got to pull different tools and activities out. And so we're going to be walking through that today.
I experienced this ironically. mm, Well, I probably experienced it several times throughout my life, but weirdly, in 2017 and 2000, late 2017 and mid 2018, I had two different times where I had the opportunity to do this exact same exercise. And one was in like a course I was taking, and one was at a conference. And it was like, okay, right at the top of your page, today's date, 5 years from now. And so I wrote, at that point it was going to be July 2023. And then they said, now describe your life. Imagine that it is 2023 and describe your life. And it was an interesting mental exercise for me. And so I write down some things. Like at that point, for me, I had to go, okay, I'm going to be, ooh, that's the year I turned 50. So it was very cool for me to go, ooh, this is nice. This is the year I'll turn 50. So my kids are this age. My grandchild will be this age. So here's that kind of set my context of my life, of kind of where I was at. And then started thinking about kind of the wheel of life that we talk about in Be Freaking Awesome. Like, okay, spiritually, where do I want to be? Personal development, fulfillment. Where do I want to be financially? What do I want to do? Career, friends, these sorts of things. And so I kind of walked through those different sections of my life, pretty heavy focused on career, because especially back in 2018, I was I was fresh off of publishing my book, Be Freaking Awesome. So I was still enmeshed in positive thinking culture and hadn't really embraced the idea that the way through my panic attacks was actually to feel them. So I was definitely a lot of positive thinking around my career and my goals and where I wanted to be. And last year, so I did those two exercises and they landed on this bookshelf. Like I point there because there's all kinds of courses that are over there. One of them was actually in in my digital bookshelf, right? Last year, I didn't look at them. 2017, 2018, put them aside. Did not look at them again. 2023 rolls around, and near the end of the year, like I think it was July, August, I had this weird sense. I was like, this feels familiar. Like it was the most bizarre experience because I was like, but I why would this feel familiar? This is so strange that this feels familiar. And so I was like, I was just kind of pondering. It what didn't feel deja vu. Like, how you'll have that moment, ooh, deja vu. It was, and I was like, wait a minute, didn't I do that exercise? And so I went and dug over there and I started thinking, oh wait, I remember I took that class from Jensen Cherno and we did that exercise and I pulled them out and I read them and it was a little bit nuts. Like it was like reading a lot of my life. Like there were things about how much travel I was doing. There were things about how that I had two grandchildren. There were like sort of the type of work I would be doing. Anyway, it wasn't spot on exact. The details were off, but the trajectory I had landed in the right area of the world, so to speak. And it's interesting that I had that experience because I talk about um in Be Freaking Awesome and all sorts of things. I was talking to people about like imagine your future self and doing these things. But since then, since that experience, I've gotten a lot more intentional.
I think that one of the things that's really neat about this particular exercise is that to me, it is another way to go about goal setting that is less than traditional. That
Mhm.
there are some people, and Angela, I think you had shared with me that there were a couple people who gave you some pushback on our goal setting episode and the things that we shared, because the way that we talked about goal setting doesn't work for every single person. The way we talked about it in that episode, it doesn't work for everybody. Not everybody likes it. They don't want to, name things in that way. And yet, there can be this drift that happens when you're not intentional about where you want to go. I don't know. We're just going to always use the boat metaphor and going through life, that if your
100%.
sails and rudder are not pointed in a direction, you are still going to move in life. You're going to drift. And so there is something about just like, I actually may not care specifically how I get from point A to point B. And maybe I don't have a point B, but I've got a general heading. I'd like to go east, not west. That's different to be like, I don't really know where east exactly, but I do have some idea of the general way I would like my life to go. And so I think that this exercise is a good goal setting alternative for those who don't love traditional goal setting. But I also think, even for people who love traditional goal setting, I think the flip side is true, that this can be helpful if you get stuck, particularly in the like perfectionist wheel of goal setting. This is a really good way to think about some intention and life direction that is not, it's not as easy to trigger the perfectionism monsters that can pop up, because it really is just about like take a moment to dream. Take a moment to daydream about what your life could look like. We're not naming, this is the dollar amount in my bank account, that I'm going to be specific and timely and realistic. No, we're talking about the how of life.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that this is something, goal setting alternative, still fits within our reflection and all of that. What are some other ways that you see this being useful, kind of just in general life?
We talk a lot on this podcast about the importance of relationships. And well, it's been a couple of months since I quoted the Harvard study, longitudinal study on a
Has
good
it been
life.
a couple of months?
Surely it has. It's a great book. You should read it. Anyway, I should get some like royalties as much as I promote it. Anyway, the thing is that it's so relationships really does contribute to a freaking awesome life. And so in that vein of being more intentional, I actually have kind of turned this 5-year day in the life a little bit. I've tweaked it just a little bit to kind of take dinner conversations to a little bit deeper level, and to get, because I kind of just get tired of like, what do you do, and tell me more about yourself, right? And I want to go deeper, and especially with people that I've been hanging out with for a long time. And so I will say I kind of get the juices flowing by saying, if you were to go back to 18-year-old you, what would you thank them for doing, or choosing, or not doing? How would you thank 18-year-old self? Today's self is better because of something that they did. I've been fascinated by the answers. It's super interesting. My favorite is that somebody said, "Oh, I'm super happy that 18-year-old self worked hard in college, worked hard in high school and college, so that way it's set the path for me to be able to get my master's program, and I'm not having to go into a lot of school debt because they worked really hard and stayed on track." And I'm like, oh, that's beautiful. And then I follow it up with the next question. Now, when you're 50, people are like, golly, I don't remember 18-year-old me. Super fun to do this recently with some girlfriends that knew me at 18-year-old self. And that was really super fun, because then they asked me, Angela, what are you grateful for 18-year-old self? And I said that she chose very good friends, and which is true, and it was a great compliment to those sweet friends that have been my friends since 18. Anyway, so then I go and I say, okay, now think about you 5 years from now or 10 years from now. What is that version of you going to be grateful to today you for choosing, or doing, or experiencing?
Mm.
And they're like, "Whoa." Like, you can tell it's a little harder to, because, we are having to use our imagination. And it's interesting how curiosity and imagination are kind of tied together. And I'm recognizing how you have to have a little bit of psychological safety. So this is a harder question for people that don't know me really well and feel like they can trust me, but I still can kind of come up with some things. So,
Hold on, before you go on though, even though people have the psychological safety of knowing you, I actually asked a similar version of the question at a networking event to somebody, and it was like they're in their master's program, and I was like, "What do you hope to accomplish after you
mhm,
finish this?" And they were like, "To get a job." And I was like, "Come on, Victor, what are we doing here? You don't know me. I don't know you. You could tell me your big grand dreams and it's no difference, no skin off my nose. Come on, what do you want to do? What is it that you hope happens in the future?" And it was such an interesting invite that I basically played the opposite card. Instead of saying, like, "Oh, yes, because you know me and trust me, you can
I
share
do.
these things." I was like, "I'm a random stranger. You can tell me anything." And that's like, what's it gonna do? And it was such an interesting like moment of just like opening up. And he ended up sharing some really neat and personal things with me, a random stranger. I don't know that we're gonna be random strangers for much longer, but
It took the relation to a new depth real fast, didn't it?
really fast at a networking event that we'd never met each other before.
Isn't that
And
beautiful?
I don't know, it makes me think Forrest Gump of like, I'm not supposed to talk to strangers. Well, my name's Forrest. Well, now we're not strangers. Like it just took this moment to be like, well, now we're not strangers.
Mm,
You shared this deep personal part of you. I will say, I wouldn't go casting pearls before swine and just offer up your big dreams to everybody. But
sure.
I'm really proud of how I was able to create some safety for this person even though I had just met them. And
Yeah,
so you don't have to have a big, long, deep relationship with somebody to be able
correct.
to go to this place if you are willing to hold a good, safe space for it. Like, you're not going to let them share their dream and then laugh in their face. We're going to respect that they're sharing like this precious thing and
Mhm.
their dreams of the future with you. And that's not something to take lightly.
Well, and I think there's an element where as you tell that story and I think, "Oh, yeah, you and I are the kind of people who are going to hold people's dreams lightly." I mean, the tagline for our company is bringing your ideas to life. Like people come to us because they have an idea and we help them plant the seed, water and fertilize it and and kind of bring it to fruition, and that's like so much joy to be able to participate with people. And so it's interesting because I think about some other folks that I know that listen to the podcast and wonder, like, I think their first step will actually be to be honest and share their own dreams with themselves,
Mm.
because sometimes our inner critic, and I think about it, if I think back to 2010 version of me, probably wasn't the safest person for me to even share my dreams with, because that version of me was pretty critical and pretty harsh and pretty driven for by perfectionism, and therefore it was pretty hard for me um to be able to do that. I say that and I glance up and see my master's degree. I'm like, okay, maybe not 2010 me, but whatever. There was a version of me that just didn't necessarily wasn't even safe for myself to share my big dreams with.
I think that this is actually a really nice segue. We don't want to just talk the talk here. We also want to walk the walk. What's funny about all of this, the irony of being the safe space and holding this and whatnot, is that we're 15 minutes into this episode, 20 minutes ago, podcast time. So 5 minutes before we started recording, I was like, oh my gosh, Angela, we should do this live. We should talk through what our 5 year day in the life is live. And Angela's response to me was bleep no. And
I'm like, would we all like to talk about all the places I'm sweating right now and the stomach churning and all the things? I like to
One of
curate my dreams. Thank you very much.
Right, she was like, "I wish I would have known this even yesterday, then I could have written it out beforehand." And I was like, "No, no, no. I think what will be perfect about this is getting to see the experience live and getting to see some of the challenge of it." Now, Angela, you cover your ears for a moment. I'm talking to the podcast listeners, okay? And you don't have to cover your ears, whatever. Like we talked about a moment ago, where when people share with us their dreams of the future, and you need to hold that gently, you got to hold people's dreams lightly. This is what makes this a sweaty experience for both of us, is that we are not just sharing this with each other while we're hanging out doing whatever. I think the part that makes this sweaty is that we are sharing it with you, the internet, the whole wide world. There's a part of that that's like, okay, great, world, what are you going to do with these dreams?
I
I don't know. Be gentle, people. What's your thoughts, Angela?
Well, my thought is that the reason why it's nerve-wracking for me is because weirdly, after 2023, after I turned 50, I stopped thinking in 5-year increments. I had set the goal when I was 40. 40 is probably around the time that I was starting to, like, I think I got my first bike back then. I had, ran a couple of little 5Ks. It was a few years before I did the 12 5Ks. I was really starting to think about I'm not getting any younger fitness wise. Always thought that way from an eating and a supplements kind of a thing. But so I set the goal when I was 40, something, I think early 40, that I want to be stronger at 60 than I was at 40. I can already tell you at 50 I'm way stronger than I was at 40. And I want to be stronger, like, physically is the easiest one to measure, but spiritually, emotionally, mentally, all the ways, I want to be
Hmm.
stronger. And so I've spent a lot of time, and for whatever reason, when I turned 50, it didn't occur to me, but as soon as I turned 51 this year, I have been like obsessed with when I'm 60. Okay, how am I going to measure that? When I was in Europe, I was literally thinking as I was doing all those trains, because I need to count how many trains I went up and down the steps and up and down the subways, and I'm carrying my uh, small carry-on, my little rolling bag, and my backpack. And we had 7 minutes between flights. So there was not like Barry could carry my bags. Like I needed to be able to like hoof it and carry my bags. And I'm like, ooh, this is a good way to track how strong you are. I want to be able to take my bag and lift it up in the overhead bin myself. It's lovely when people will help me, but I want to be able to do that. And so anyway, so I've thought a lot about 60. I haven't thought a whole lot about 56 or 55. I don't know why. I guess I'm getting to the age where I'm not. So that's why it's a little bit nerve wracking. And also, yeah, I've spent so much time thinking about physical health that I have not thought a lot about the other things. And it's also terrifying because I think about where some of those career goals that I didn't do 5 years ago, that I'm a little bit like, why didn't you stay on track?
Hmm. I think that this is really good for people to see that you and I get terrified to do these things sometimes. We don't just sit up here on high horses saying everything in life is easy and totally fine. Of
Hashtag
course not.
messy middle.
The
Hmm.
messy middle, our alternate podcast name. Um, so
People darn as excited about being a guest on the messy middle. They're way more excited about being on Be Freaking Awesome.
So, to get started, and Angela, we're both going to do this, okay? You don't have to do it alone, all right? You don't even have to go first if you want. I can go first. What would you like?
Well, okay, so 5 years from now, so it is 2024. So this will be for 2029.
September 17th, 2029. You're listening to this the day it released. And if you're listening to it in the future, pick your own date.
Yep. So I will be
I like how both of us
56.
have started writing it down. Also,
Yes,
if you're watching
I
the
will be
YouTube, you'll see we've looked
56.
away.
Ooh, Sammy, you will be 35. I don't know
Why is
why.
this? Why
I
is the
Because I used to tease
ooh?
people and say when their kids turn 40, I'm like, ooh, then you're really old when your kid turns 40. And I'm like, I wish I would have never told that joke. Because my kid's 30, and I'm like, It seems in a minute that I will be in. Yeah, I can't imagine having kids in all my kids in the 30s or almost 30s because Lexi will be 29 September. So I
Yeah.
guess she'll be 28, 29. Okay.
So you'll be 56 and I'll be
I got
35.
that. I got that.
Yeah. What? Tell me what you're breathing through right now.
I don't know where to start. I'm like going, I don't know where to start. I don't do this like, this is a contemplative exercise for me. This is a bike ride exercise. This is not stand in front of a video camera exercise for me. So,
Well, here you go. We're going to take a pause. And you guys who are listening, if you want to follow along and do this exercise too, we're going to give about 10, 15 seconds of dead air. You guys can just hit the one skip forward and it'll actually be a longer pause. So either pause your podcast and go write some things down that you're thinking about, but give us about 15 seconds in your time. We're going to take a moment and write some things out, and then we will circle back. Okay. I hope you guys enjoyed that little 15-second break. For us in real time, we took probably about 5 minutes, Angela, to just take a moment to write some things down. I think that more realistically, when we're prescribing this to somebody, I would take a little more than 5 minutes. But for us, we're trying to keep some things moving and let you guys see a little bit more of the action. We're not writing it all out. So, how was that time for you?
uh, once I got my nervous system calmed down and I could think about like I don't have to share specific dollar amounts on my podcast. I can, what does my life look like? Because your life is more than just your bank account or your revenue or your P&L, right? So like skip all that.
Yeah.
What does that look like? And so one of the things I like to do with a day in the life that I learned in the one of the on Jensen Cherno's course was actually to um, a portion of the day is spent planning and a portion of the day is spent reflecting. And by doing that, then I can talk about things that I have already accomplished that year and I can talk about plans that I'm making so that it feels like a little more of like this whole year's worth of stuff. Because quite frankly, any random Tuesday might just look like showing up, answering emails, recording a
Right.
podcast. It may not be that interesting because it turns out that just running a business is showing up and answering emails and getting your work done and doing contracts and making good on your promises, right? So
Right.
that got me off of high center. What about you?
So I started, for me, it was like one, I named out what age would I be? What are the ages of people around me? And then I was like, great. I wake up at 5:30 a.m., which if you know me is a big goal. And it's like we're going to start off strong. And
I
but I
love
named the purpose to it. And so it's so interesting. I don't want to go off on a tangent on I am not an early riser. I am jealous of people who can get up early in the morning and take some time to center themselves, take them some time to think before the chaos of the day starts, to take some time for prayer or meditation or whatever that is at the beginning. And I would like to be more of that kind of person who can have some time to settle into who I am and what's going on before you like hit the ground running, because I'm not an early riser right now. And so most of my days start with a kiddo saying, Mom, the alarm clock went off a little while ago. And you get up and start running. That's actually not true. There's just some of my days that start that way. It just feels like I have to go, go, go from the moment I wake up. And I don't like that. So 5 years from now, I've already gotten that habit down and I get up at 5:30 easily and I spend 30 minutes on my own in prayer. Then I get ready for work while my husband, who this is the part that got hazy, we have long term goals that he's going to become stay at home dad slash property manager. And I work. And so I'm like, he gets the kids ready. I don't know if he's getting the kids ready because he has already quit his day job or because his day job is just less strenuous. Either way, he's doing that. My kids are gonna bike to school because we're a family who bikes, and that's something that's a part of our habits and all these things. We live very close to both the elementary and middle school, or yeah, elementary and middle school, so it'll be easy. Then I said that I'll drive to work and I'll go to my beautiful office where I'm in my own private office. I don't share it with my coworkers as much as I love them. And I've got a beautiful couch and I've got a comfy chair, great decor. I've got two plants. That is when I giggled out loud, is when I wrote down I have two plants because that, if you know me, is a big goal. To have two thriving plants in my office because I don't know why keeping plants alive is just not in my skill set. Nobody's yelling at me that they're hungry. Plants don't yell at you when they get thirsty and hungry, so it's harder to keep them alive. In any case, that's how I started this, and I could keep going, but I realized I don't know how much you were wanting from me. This is just the way
No.
that my brain started it. Is like, what are the tiny details and logistics? I actually, without really knowing the trick about taking time for planning, I had a moment where it's like in my day, I work on preparing a training that I'm going to be doing next week. I do about two of these trainings a month. Um, so even that, it was like
Yep.
I'm preparing for a training that I do, and I do two trainings a month, and I put two trainings a month all over the country. Um, and then I also said I'm done with work by 2 and I go get coffee with a girlfriend or a friend or whoever. And then after that, I work on planning one of our upcoming quarterly trips because I take 4 trips a year. Um, this 5 year self. I've actually talked about this. My husband and I have talked about this as a goal already, where there's 4 trips. There's one with family, extended family. There's one with just our family, like the 4 of us. There's one with just Chris and I, just the 2 of us. And then the other one is open. It could be another trip with family if we do both sets of families that year, or another. Basically, it's flexible for whatever that year calls for. Maybe it's a friend trip, maybe it's something else, but at least one with extended family, one with just the 4 of us, and one with just the 2 of us. Anyway, that's a lot of my things so far.
I love
Thoughts,
it.
reflections? Any
Well, we're, coming up
keep going?
on some
Yeah.
time. So, yeah, I similarly, once I calmed down, then was able to, I think a lot about, I want to be able to go and volunteer in different
Hmm.
places around the world and then support different organizations. And so this day I was thinking about the volunteer work where I volunteered around. And then one of the that I had written down for September 2029 that I'm planning my quarterly trip to finish and go to the final continent. I will have This is the last continent. I will have hit all 7, Antarctica, by the time that 5 years. And at that point, I've already spoken in multiple countries, and I enjoy having the annual retreat of the Family Business Forum. I don't know if it'll be called that, but basically, I've had a dream for a long time that we would take family business, whether it's couples or people who own family businesses or part of family businesses, on an international retreat, because y'all all know I love to travel. And so I literally, that's why I've been scoping out places in Central America, is I want to find a place to go and have a retreat. And so planning that annual, I my house is maintained because I have a house that's old. And so there's always something. And so I want to make sure all my projects are done and that it's maintained well. And the other thing that came up was also annual family vacation with the extended family. I plan time for coffee or lunch with friends and have a regular yoga practice and also a strong and growing spiritual journey, as well as Physical, I have gotten to the point that I enjoy weightlifting.
You
So
have gotten there in 5 years.
I've gotten there in 5 years, not just doing it, but enjoying it. So those are some of the things that were on my list because, and I'm sure people my age know, but when women turn 40 and 50, our muscle loss, um, it drops fast. And so we lose muscle mass really fast as we age. They're trying to figure out, is it hormones? Somebody has probably figured out. I haven't learned exactly. And then recently, somebody has explained that that also then contributes to how strong your bones are, because even the tension of your muscles holding onto your bones, it strengthens your bones, which I never really thought about. So I want to get a more regular weightlifting routine just to maintain and be able to like prevent falls and things like that. So that's mine. Glad y'all all got to see my freak out, and then also that I calmed down and I got there.
I I want to finish a couple of mine because sorry, I was
Go
like, I
ahead.
had a few more points, but I felt like I was talking for a long time.
Oh, sorry.
Um, oh no, that's okay. One of mine is that I feel really, really great. We feel really great about our giving contributions, the way that
Mm-hmm.
we give and support organizations that we really value and think that they're doing great work. I also regularly do long distance bike rides and endurance rides. And part of why that is a bigger deal for me is the endurance rides rather than just smaller ones, is that the endurance is harder on my lungs, I have found at this point in time. And my lungs, where you have a big strength focus right now, I've been focusing a lot on my lung growth and strength, and that I want to improve my lung capacity. Having had childhood asthma and then COVID pneumonia a couple years ago, I got as an area of opportunity for me to work on strengthening that muscle and the muscles around my lungs. And so I want to be able to do long distances without having a hard time, without worrying about having a big asthma attack. So I want that to be something I could just do whenever I want. And then I also am coming off of, I actually put that it was like near celebrating the annual release of my first book. So,
Oh,
um, so not that I'm putting it out 5 years from now, but that I'm celebrating the book's birthday in about 5 years. So we'll see what happens with that. I don't actually know what the book will be, but I've always wanted to be
oh,
an author, a published
that's
author.
that's cool. I had promoting my sixth book because I'd sit there and count. I know which ones. I know I've got 3 to 4 in the works in my brain. I say in the
Yeah,
works, noodling in my brain. So I was like, okay, we'll go 6. Since
I
I've got
love it.
2 now, that feels
What
aggressive.
tips would you give to somebody who's doing this activity for the first time?
What would I recommend? I would recommend that you visit a resource like the Wheel of Life, which you can find on thefreakingawesome.com. We'll put that in the show notes, the link to that Wheel of Life. That will be a great place to start, because what the Wheel of Life actually does is it gives you about 10 different areas to kind of monitor your life and to score it. And so you could say, I mean, one way to do this exercise is to say, okay, where am I at right now from a giving perspective, for instance? And then where
Yeah.
do I want to be? So you could use the Wheel of Life to say, oh, okay, based on this. But it's a good way to like think about the areas of your life. You also could think about your areas of your life and like what's working well right now. What do you want to start, stop, and continue? I think we talked about with the goal setting episode.
Hmm.
What do you want to keep doing? Building strong relationships. Let me just say, whatever's on your list, which mine did say great marriage. I didn't talk about that, but the if you start this activity and you don't have relationships on there, might I just say relationships, and also your body. There's only one. So let's take care of your body. And part of the way you can take care of your body is take care of your emotional and mental health. So that would be how I would start, is like kind of an
Yeah.
assessment of where you are and then where you might want to be. And here's the thing, you can, well, we'll talk about in our next episode, we're going to talk about what to do with this exercise.
Well, and I think my encouragement for you is that it's not a competition.
Yeah.
It's also, if there's anything in your life right now that you are like, man, that just kind of feels impossible. I want that thing, but I have no idea how I would get there. That's okay. Anything you write down, I think it's actually kind of magical when you find those things. Um, it's not, it's not the thing that you're like, oh, I know exactly my step by step goals of how to get there. No, what's the thing that you want? What is that? Maybe when we were talking about it's hard to know what you want, what's that thing inside you that you need to kind of let out? And when you find and uncover those nuggets, let them be. Treat them safely and gently. Be the kind person to yourself. It's not a competition. You're not comparing your notes to ours. Your life goals, you are at a different spot. My aim for when I'm 35 is different than Angela's aim for when she's 35, is different than my aim will be for 56, than your aim might be for 56. So it's not a competition. Be very gentle with yourself and use it in the spirit that it's intended and let it be what it is. Thank you guys so much for listening. Thank you for giving so much grace and space and love to us throughout all of these episodes. I, said earlier, treat us with kindness, but really and truthfully, I don't know that I actually have to say that because you guys are always so wonderful and amazing. So thank you for listening. Thank